Good evening. How is everybody?
Good.
It's good to see everybody. David, I hope things are more back to normal.
Thank you, sir.
Prayers for you and your family.
Appreciate that.
All righty. So let's get started tonight. Let's talk about the stars of the week. This week we were working on cyberbullying and going into that was number 4, cyberbullying, bullying, and then number 4 was discipline. They kind of, as you know, go back to back. And so here's some things that caught my eye this week. People said, Macy last night's group said, discipline's really about holding your staff accountable. Duh. That's exactly what it is. Discipline is about holding your staff and yourself accountable. You're holding them accountable to institute good classroom management, use whatever system of discipline that you have. That's from number 5. Working toward restorative justice rather than punishment. And so are they filling out the referrals? Are they doing the things that they need to be doing? Are they being even-handed? Are they being arbitrary? Some kid can do it and everybody grins and thinks it's funny, and somebody else you try to shoot them. Are they doing the capricious thing where they're saving up everything the kid did all week and put it all on one referral? That kind of stuff. So discipline is about holding the teaching staff accountable, but the administrative staff, how long stuff takes. Heather talked about, she was surprised how many interventions their school has that teachers don't even know about, that don't do. Restorative justice. So I'll go ahead and say it, but somebody talked about, and I'll get to it in a minute, who it was, talked about remembering interventions not just for academics, it's for behavior too. Being a champion for kids means holding yourself and your staff accountable for due process to make sure that you understand the point of behavior modification, trying to get to doing discipline is to try to get kids to do better. It's not about punishment. It's our last case study was about a teacher, was about punishment. It wasn't about learning. It was about punishment. Retribution. You cannot be in that business. That will not end well for you. Michelle pointed out, she did a little bit deeper into the origin of zero tolerance from back in the 80s. It was designed for violent offenses, like when a kid shot another kid or brought guns to school. Zero tolerance was never intended for turning your brother's homework paper in. It's been ruled illegal since then, but going back to the origins of it, it was never intended to do this, to do something as crazy as this. It was only about public safety issues. Lakeitha talked about using previous work, the AppSell and the AppTell. Tell us about that when I'm shifting gears here a little bit, but when you did some work with your faculty and with your administrative team and you used the AppSell and AppTell. Tell us about that.
So in the last class, we had the opportunity to do a survey just to find out about teacher outlook on what was going on in the building. Did they feel like they had an opportunity to know anything about the budget? Did they have an opportunity to be a part of making decisions? It was very interesting. Academic is mostly all that teachers are involved in. And if you're not a part of SIT, you do not get that opportunity. So that opened some dialogue in our PLCs in regards to teachers wanting to know a little bit more, even in the interviewing process. And so the data was shared with our new principal, we had a turnover in January. So me being able to give him some data and also some feedback from the staff gave a lot of headway in me being able to hear the teacher side, plus getting a new administrator to see what was actually going on with the staff. And so then also sharing the matrix that we use for going in the classroom to make some observations. That gave a different twist because our district had a very vague style of going in and looking at certain things. It was kind of really vague versus Marzano's. And so he allowed me to use the one that we were solicited, and the teachers were more apt to hear some of the concerns. And my benefit from that was in the action plan that I was able to use and create, we were able to get an interventionist this school year so that we can start the 3-tier process.
Excellent. You might say, well, Dale, this is an odd time to mention this. No, I want to make a point here, and Lakeitha just made it for me. If you want to hold teachers accountable and you want them to follow the rules and do the thing, you need to involve them in the decision making. They need to know what's going on in your building. You can't treat them like mushrooms, keep them in the dark and feed them a load of crap all the time and expect that. And then on the other end, you have all these rules and you're mad that they don't follow through on things. What did you train them? Did you tell them? Did you work with them? Were you open and transparent so they knew what was going on? Were they ever a part of the decision? Did they have a seat at the table? Or were they at the kids' table at Thanksgiving? You know, they weren't with the grown people. So that's what we're talking about here. Discipline in school is about holding your staff accountable, but it's holding yourself accountable to do due process, but also to involve your staff in decision making and let them know what's going on. As I said, you're back. Heather was talking about she didn't even know what interventions they had. Now, is that Heather's problem or the school administration's problem? That means that they're not being transparent. How can you expect me to be using these things if I don't even know we've got them? So that's how discipline in school works. Mary pointed out, unfortunately, and thank you, Mary, for pointing this out. All too often, absence of due process with referrals and what goes on with kids. All too often, this is happening. But it starts with that communication, that openness, that partnership that you have to have with the faculty. That's what you have to have. Amanda talked about non-biased party. She was with us last night. That kind of leads me into the new laws. That what triggered my mind there is that's a new law that came in 2021. Some of you even mentioned that your district hadn't updated your Title IX policy since the law changed in 2021 that says non-biased party. Now, what that means is you can't handle those cases anymore. I've been saying that for years, that you're not qualified under my interpretation of the law. And I used to do this for the largest school district in the state. So that was my interpretation then. We changed over and got our own police force, went from security to a police force so I could hire investigators, simply a male and a female. Guess what they did? Investigations of a sexual nature. Because school administrators, I was having to let too many of them go for their behavior. Contrary to popular opinion, I do have a heart. It's small, but I do have one, and I have a conscience. And I was having to let too many people go because they were putting themselves in the investigative role to find what they wanted to find or not find what they didn't want to find. And I knew that the outcomes weren't coming out right. I was having too many lawsuits and too many, the news media was killing us. I was having to let too many people go. So we got us a police force. We hired Kenny and Angela, Kenny Lynch and Angela, and to do to do investigations of this nature. Now, in 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, where everybody was asleep, myself included, Title IX changed. It said you have to have an individual investigator. You can't do it yourself. You're not allowed to, because the person that does the investigation can't be the one that delivers the findings. It can't be you. And so, to that end, what I have is the new Title I where the law changed, and I have a video that explains it to you. It's under tonight's lesson. Now, if you saw those or not, when we go there, you'll see that. That's what we're talking about here. You must use an independent person. All right. Sparkle, she was in last night's group. Terrence, he was in last night's group, but he pointed out that got to move from discipline to restorative practice, but it takes a long time. There's an incident and fighting in the gym. It took 2 days to investigate and get to the bottom of it. Yeah, that's number one concern. It's time it takes to do due process and do it right. But if you don't, what happened at Waddell? There was a report of a big fight in the locker room down there. They, walked by and said, "Did anybody hear anything about that?" Nah, nothing to see here, and went on about it. Except later that day, a 17-minute video with 40 kids participating in Fight Club hit social media. 17 minutes long. Kids in the hospital. 17-minute long Fight Club video. That was back in the era of Fight Club. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with that, there was a movie with Brad Pitt and Ed Norton called Fight Club. And during that period of time, that was a real problem in high schools. I know it sounds, but I'm telling you, it was a real thing, and it was very dangerous. Very dangerous. And they had one in the big bathroom in the gym, in a locker room bathroom, that lasted 17 minutes with 40 kids involved. Hit social media. Well, you just said nothing happened. Well, we were busy. We didn't have time. We just asked. That AP had to go home. We can't. We work on the public trust. We can't go out and say nothing to see here when all of a sudden it hits social media. There was something to see here. 2 kids' parents sued us for severe injuries, and we had to settle those cases. So yes, it takes a while. You have to do that. Melissa had several scenarios using last night's groups. It doesn't matter Alyssa pointed out that, especially on this bullying and cyberbullying and harassment, it's important to follow up. She had a case at her school that came back 2 years later and led to some resignations, principal and I think a teacher, she said, in her post. But it came back 2 years later. So the notion here is that this will come back to you. Lily Ann said that they have a bullying hotline in their school. Again, you need to know what all the interventions are. A point was made, well, our school don't have a cyberbullying policy. Your district does. It extends to you. And that's a reminder to us all that all this stuff needs to be in our faculty handbook. The grading scale is supposed to be in there for the district. Master schedule, the duty roster, the supervision schedule. All these things are supposed to be in there. Title IX, cyberbullying, the bullying reporting system, all that stuff needs to be in your faculty handbook. Now, I know most of you, a lot of that stuff is in your code of conduct that has to do with behavior, but you need to duplicate it and make sure that it's in your handbook as well. And you need to go through that code of conduct. Don't just say, here's the code of conduct, good luck. You need to have some serious conversations around that, about what constitutes these things. And then finally, we did have some people who are already responded to discussion board 6. The appropriate thing to do, I'm glad that you're researching all the field trip. I mean, on the way I do a field trip now, it'd be a have to. because of all the rules and policies and the liability around it. I mean, if you take DECA to Atlanta, they're going to get drunk. That's just the way it works. The DECA people, I don't know why they drink so much, but they do. Every year of my career, I've had to deal with a DECA group, distributive education marketing, going to their convention in Atlanta and all of them being drunk. I think they just pass out alcohol on the way. But if you have an accident, you need to call 911 immediately. And you don't need to talk to the press. You don't need to be calling parents. Public information will do that. Don't be making statements. I've had 2 situations, one that I was involved in when I was principal in Charlotte and one that I had to deal with when I was in the central office. I'll talk to you about the first one. The first one was I had a bus that got hit up at Delahaye Court, not a good part of town, North Charlotte. Time we got there, there was people that were claiming that the bus was going backwards and hit them, and there were people laying on the ground. There's 24 people, and it was a 6-passenger car, and there's 24 people laying on the ground claiming injuries. You got to get the police there immediately because people will take advantage of you. The second one is I've had a situation where there was a minor fender bender, and the bus driver got out and checked and went on about their business. And then the next day, parents came in with kids claiming medical bills that they were hurt and injured. And the driver said, well, nobody even knew the bus got hit. I'm not sure that kids were on it when it got hit. Well, did you call 911? Did you get the police out to take pictures? Did you get, no, it was in a hurry, get home. Call 911 and be careful about not only don't talk to the media and make the public information and make statements to parents, but be careful about the medical attention deal too. Unless you're a medical doctor, that Good Samaritan business will get you. So do the best that you can on that, but that covers that. The postmortem on case 31 this was a teacher issue, and the two overarching, no due process, but the overarching on that is discipline has to be about restorative justice and restorative practice. It can't be about punishment. If it's about punishment, you will have incidents like this at your school. And as Mary pointed out, you'll have all kinds of abuses of the referral disciplinary system if discipline is just about punishment. All right. Next week's case study is the superintendent was in the wrong. You got to dig into the Leandro case. Leandro is the most important and most known school funding case in the United States of America. It just happened to happen in North Carolina. It's the biggest case. You've got to understand that the plaintiffs in Leandro, the low wealth districts, lost. They lost. Doesn't matter that the judge said every kid gets a basic education and there needs to be more money put into schools. But that's pork barrel. So they started the lottery. Nobody ever got a nickel in school from the lottery. There's a few opportunity scholarships. Lottery is a hoax. By the time that you pay the winners, pay the company that administrates it, pay that idiot that wears that sign and does that advertisement on TV, Tuesday, I see them lottery commercials. I'd get rid of my TV if it was up to me, just so I wouldn't have to see one of them. It makes me so mad when I see a lottery commercial. Full disclosure, I was on the losing team. I was on the legal team for Leandro in '94. I was working out of the Institute of Government. I had done my doctorate at Chapel Hill. I was working for them through the Institute of Government. I was on the legal team. I'm not bitter at all 30 years later. But I still want to throw stuff at the TV when that lottery commercial comes on. And at the time, lotteries are just a regressive tax on poor people. They never help schools, never. And so what was it Judge Lee said 3 years ago? That West Ed came in and said, you're not fulfilling this basic ed promise? Because what the state Supreme Court said is the money starts out even from the state. That one group is wealthier, like in Mecklenburg, where the big house is, where I live, that it ends up being disparity. That state has no relief for you on that. And not only are we not going to change that, you can't change that locally. You can't do that. Now, we know you can't move federal money because it tracks to individual kids. That's why I had you track all those federal programs. It not only do we need to know who they are when we schedule, we also need to know who they are and what we're supposed to get, because we got to spend that money that way. We can't take a federal position and use it to teach something else. And vice versa. We can't take a state position. As I inherited at Olympic High School, I inherited a state position teaching a federal program. That has to stop today, they said. When that first day I was principal and had that first meeting, when somebody calls from the central office and says, hey, let's have lunch. And you say, well, I'm really busy. I didn't mean that. That wasn't a question. And they have what I call the book. The legal stuff or illegal stuff, that's the legal stuff that's not happening, or the illegal stuff that is happening, that you have to stop today. Doesn't matter that that's been going on for 6 years. You have to stop it today. And as they said to me, that's why you're the principal here, not the fellow that was here. And so the federal government had closed photography. And we had this extensive photography lab down in the vocational building, and had a photography teacher, and everybody in the community loved him in that program, and they wanted to keep that. And so they just took a state English position and paid the photography teacher. Except what'd that do to the class size in English? Yeah, we had 40 kids in 10th grade English in that particular section. Yeah, because we were a teacher short. And so you can't move federal money. Now, state money follows the kids again. Remember, it comes per pupil. Can't move it. State says we're not changing that formula. It comes to the kid. All right, you say, but what about local money? We can move local money. No, you can't. You don't own your local money. Does the school board tax and give itself fund its own budget? No. Who gives you money? The county commissioners. You have to give them a line item budget. Can you deviate from that line item budget? No. You say, well, oh, I'll be smart. I'll go to them and get it put in the budget. Now that we have district commissioner races, what's the likelihood that they're going to let you give one part of the county more money than the other when the people who are losing money are going to vote you out as commissioner? None. Not going to happen. The example is Chapel Hill Carborough. Again, happened during the pandemic when everybody was asleep in 2021. The superintendent and the chief financial officer there the CFO got fired. They let the superintendent resign, trying to move money. As you know, Chapel Hill Carborough, if you're familiar with that part of the world, Chapel Hill is white and affluent. Carborough is not. The superintendent, Baldwin, was trying to do exactly what this superintendent was doing, exactly. Trying to move some resources to the kids that needed them more on the other side of town. Well, you can't do that. But the superintendent does have discretionary money. So what she did was she took her discretionary money to do this. Well, the problem was it was a contract, and she was going to spend discretion money ongoing on this. Can't do that. That's illegal. One budget ends. You can't obligate discretionary money beyond one cycle. And so I've got that article pulled up. You can Google it. Just Google Baldwin, Chapel Hill Carborough, and here's what you'll get. Right here, resigns, will leave system in June. April 16th, 2020. The Board of Education said in release to approve meeting Thursday would be effective. Baldwin and the school system came under criticism from the community. Actually, it was a grandmother who was a retired principal on the Chapel Hill side, who had a grandbaby on Chapel Hill side, knew the law. District was involved with a contract not publicly approved by the school board. They were trying to get more help to the Carborough side of town. Contracts worth more than $90,000 are required to have public school board vote. And they had a $767,000 partnership in the education elements. It was actually a little over $1 million. That's how much they still owed when they found out about it. The school board suspended the contract, and the CFO was fired. And so if you dig deeper into it, you can Google more and get more of the story from some of those, I don't know, something like Rhino Times or some of those, penny papers that they throw out in your yard and tell you all about it. And there's a couple online sites, but that's exactly what that superintendent tried to do. Exactly what's in this case study, and end up fired. And so you can't move the money. And so again, Judge Lee 3 years ago, after independent, Wested did independent, said, no, that you're not, that promise that you'll get more money through the lottery, it never came. You owe poor schools $2 billion. And to which the state legislator said, as most 12-year-olds do, 90 boo-boo, you can't make me. We're not giving the money. So it's still in court right now, but they'll never give the money. And so when it says every child is gets a basic education, what they were saying, they weren't saying that in a good thing. We call that your Leandro right. But what they were saying is that's all we have to fund, and we get to determine what that is. If we give you 2,000, then that's what a basic ed costs. If we give you 8, there's no independent arbiter. That's what Wested was appointed to say is what the state giving really enough to pay for a basic ed? And they said, no, it's not. But the state still refuses. The General Assembly still refuses to pay. State legislature. They say the quiet part out loud. We're going to give it to our friends and supporters and privates and charter schools. I have nothing against either one of them. I have a lot of former students in both. But what they're saying is we're not going to help poor kids, disadvantaged kids, but neither are we going to allow you to do it either. And that's what, if you read that Duke Law summary of the Leandro case, that's what it says. Not only is the state not going to adjust the money, me and Olivia are in Rutherford County tonight. She was baling straw last night, she said. Well, I've done that a day or two in Rutherford County myself. But in Rutherford County, they don't have any local money other than just for buildings. It's all they can do to keep their buildings up. So they can't add any to the local budget for education, for educating the child. The big house is in Mecklenburg. My primary residence, we add almost as much again to the budget to educate kids as the state gives us, but a lot more business in Mecklenburg. Also, the big house, the crazy thing about the living there is, especially in certain parts of the county, the property evaluations. Property is just worth so much more there. My house at Lake Norman, if I had that same house, and I did have one similar size, that I sold in 2000, I sold the second big house. I'm down to one big house and a little house now. I sold the second big house over on Doggett Road in Forest City, and Olivia might know where Doggett Road is. I had one of those big houses. It's worth about 1/5 of what a house that size is worth in Mecklenburg County. Let me say that again, about 1/5. Same house value. Yep, I had one of those big houses on Doggett Road. But you can afford it in Rutherford County. It doesn't cost that much, tax isn't that bad. And so, but even if you were willing to tax yourself, there's just nothing to tax here. It's all on a millage or percentage basis. A 2,000 square foot house in Rutherford County is $200,000. It's $1 million in certain parts of Mecklenburg County. So getting a percentage of $1 million is a whole lot more than getting a percentage of 200,000, about 5 times as much. So the people in Mecklenburg at the same millage produce 5 times as much on residential. There's so much more residential. It's not just they get 5 times more money on that. There's 10 times as many houses or more, and not counting all the businesses. And so when you boil it down, they have the capacity to do that. Rutherford County doesn't. And that's what Leandro was about. But what you've got to understand, and the takeaway on this case is, you get 4 streams of money: federal, state, local money, and your school money. 4 streams of money. You have to know how every penny of it can be spent, and you have to account for every penny of it. You can't mix it, you can't blend it, you can't bend it around. It has to be spent exactly as it came to you for what it was intended to be spent for. That's the best lesson I can teach you about school finance is whatever code's on it, that's what you spend it on. Don't get into, oh, well, maybe we could spend it for this. No. Maybe somebody will approve this. They might, but then when you get audited and find out it's wrong, that person, they'll have amnesia. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. Don't ask. Know what the money's supposed to be spent for, and that's all you spend it on. You can't move no funds that you have other than your school funds, and you shouldn't be moving school funds around either. Remember who ought to be in on the school budget? The school improvement team of parents, teachers, secondary school, might even have a student, but you've got a team that has put together that budget that's supposed to follow that school improvement plan that state requires you to have. You're supposed to put your money behind it. You don't need to be using it as a slush fund either. It's so easy not to get in trouble financially. Just do what you're supposed to do. Don't think you're hurting the team. Just do what you're supposed to do. And everything will be fine. But that's the whole notion of the Leandro case. Even superintendents get it wrong sometimes because they have all these forward-thinking ideas. One of the phrase that I hate the most in organizations is thinking outside the box. No, that's not what they hired us for. We follow law and policy. That's what they hired us to do as school administrators. We follow law and policy. Somewhere in the interviewing process for an administrative job, your first one, they're going to ask you if there's a law or policy in your district that you don't agree with, would you uphold that? And your answer, without hesitation, is yes, because that's what they hired you to do. We get in trouble when we start trying to think outside of the box, because that means we have to put money behind it. That's where we get in trouble. That leads me to the skip. Skip task 1, we start with a needs assessment. But it's a very limited needs assessment. For you in South Carolina, you can go to your teacher survey, parent-teacher survey. For you in North Carolina, you go to the teacher working condition survey and look at the parent and community involvement section. What you're trying to determine in skip task 1 is the gaps in communication between the school and the parents. What could you do social media wise to get better connected with them? Now, one of the things that I wonder sometimes about folks is parent involvement is a vehicle. It's not the destination. It's the vehicle to help us get us to the destination. What's our job? Make a good number go up or a bad number go down. We want disciplinary statistics like suspensions and infractions to go down, while we want test scores to go up. Parent involvement is that vehicle that helps us get to those better numbers if we can involve parents. Now, what is parent involvement? It's not coming to the ball game, the step, the talent show or the step competition or whatever. It's not that. If those of you who grew up, it's been a while, in the area near Charlotte, on the east side of town, over in a little community called Mint Hills, a high school over there, Independence High School, and they won 9 or 10 state 4AA titles in football in the aughts from like 2000 to 2010. I was in the central office by then. I left the principalship in 2000. Yes, I'm that old. After 17 years as a principal, I went to the central office. One of the things I had to do was get supervision out there Friday night football. We also had Big Friday. When I was high school principal and had to do it Big Friday, we would go to the big stadium downtown, not the Panther Stadium, but the other stadium. I'm having a senior moment here. But there's another stadium downtown, traditional old stadium. And we would go down there for Big Friday and be on TV and I think, but point is I can't make this up. We would have some playoff games at Independence High School. There'd be 40,000 people there. 40,000. Every parent in the community, everybody in the community was there. Charlotte's a big place. 40,000 is not a big crowd in Charlotte. Do you think their test scores went up at all? No, that's not parent involvement. We need parents in the building, not just standing around and holding other kids back so their kids can get in front of them. We need them in the building to educate them. Here's the notion. Follow me. Help us, help you, help your child. It's a back bounce. It's an indirect. Last semester, both of your evidences were direct. We're going to put a learning program in. We're going to put staff development in. This semester, our evidences have been indirect. The OMA is not, we're going to do the budget and the master schedule to support the school improvement initiatives. They aren't the initiative, they support. Remember that triangle? They're the base of support for those academic initiatives up here in your school improvement plan of that program and that staff development that you wanted to do. They're indirect. The skip is once we hook those parents, once we figure out what those gaps are, and we put whatever social media that we were smart enough to pull off in place, and we get them in the building. Family math night, family reading night, family EOG night, family EOC, family SC ready night. Help us, help you, help your child. It helps with behavior. It helps with academics. It's not direct, but we can't think, well, the whole point of the exercise is just to communicate with parents. And I've got enough friends. I don't need somebody else. My phone rings all day and all night now. I get 110 emails a day. I don't need anybody else. What I need is people that can help me as a school principal. Parents can help me. Now, so that's the first part. We do that. Now, at the end of part of task 1, part A, we've got to have some goals here, short-term and long-term. Please don't be the person that's dumb enough to think that long-term is just an extension of short-term. Just do it longer. Short-term goals are, what are we going to do to communicate with these people better? And long-term is, now that we're communicating, what we're going to do with them. Family math night, family reading night. Here's my 2 examples for you from previous students. I had Dr. Wendy, Jonathan, and Lisa Boyd. Lisa's, I think she's testing coordinator in Winston-Salem now. They were all at Parkland High School in Winston-Salem. We did a family night for the Hispanic. They had a big population. Big districts do pupil assignments, not like Olivia out in Rutherford County where we are tonight. You just have district boundaries because of where you live. It's not the way it works in big districts. You have pupil assignment. And you can have a completely different group one year than you had last year. And so they went through a big reassignment in Winston-Salem. And so that all of a sudden they got this huge Hispanic speaking population that they hadn't had before at Parkland High School. It just happens that way. And so they were having a family night for the Hispanic parents to come in and do all these wonderful things with them. And they planned it and got it all, got the food, everything's ready. They had 4 parents to show up. 4. They didn't do the communication piece. They said, but we sent out this notice and that notice. We did this and that and the other. Thankfully, one of the 4 that came was Reverend Jose from the local church. And he said, they can't get here at 7 o'clock at night. The bus doesn't run. So we worked with Reverend Jose. We got hooked in. We actually were communicating with the Hispanic community. And we ran it again a month later, and we had 400 parents show up. This time we ran it in the afternoon. It was on the bus line when they could get there and get home. You say, well, the buses run till 7 o'clock. But if you have it at 7 o'clock, when you get done at 8 or 9, how are they going to get home? Walk. So we had it at 5 so they could get, and we got them out in an hour so they could catch the bus and get home by 7 when the buses stopped running. Just simple things like that. But we didn't know it because we weren't communicating. Next thing you know, all of a sudden they get all this Hispanic, and they got them involved in, the principal there, Bill Lee. He was, it made his career. Quite honestly, that's an ugly thing to say, but it really did. It made his career. They turned that school around overnight once they got that community behind them and started getting some information to those parents. The second one was in Guilford County, next door, the next county over going east. Northwest Guilford High School, nice suburban high school. Ralph Kitley was the principal. His daughter Elizabeth is the 6'6" center from Virginia Tech that blew her knee out and ruined their chances at the NCAA championship this year. Ralph's a 7-footer that played at Duke. I've known him a long time. He's a good bit younger than me. Ralph just retired though, but I've known Ralph for a long time. Nice suburban high school, but Diana Birdsley and Keisha Sinclair were my 2 students there at that time. I had 6, but they worked on this one. I had 6 at one time there. And put together a family, we had put together a college fair, but we ran it at night, not just for the kids during the day for the juniors and seniors. We ran it one night and had everybody come just for the parents of the freshmen. And on every table, now Novant was our corporate sponsor, it was about medical careers. On every table we had, this is how much money this job will pay. This is the degree you need. These are the colleges that offer it. This is the courses you need in high school, the advanced courses to get into that curriculum, that major at that college. Within 2 years, they had the highest percentage of kids in advanced courses of any high school in North Carolina. Let me say that again. Had the highest percentage of kids in advanced courses of any high school in North Carolina in 2 years. Those parents came in and saw that. They got involved with making sure when the kids filled out their schedule, high school, you fill it out every 4 or 5 months because you got multiple semesters during the year. Some even run 3, but everybody runs at least 2 now. Making sure that they knew what their kids were signing up for. They were taking the right courses. They got the parents involved. Help us help you help your child. Those are non-traditional. Family math night's great. Charles Toms. Olivia's not old enough to remember Charles. Charles was a young principal in Rutherford County, young to me. He died at 44, just a freak cancer. But Charles was principal at Sunshines. Olivia knows where Sunshine is. She'll smile. It's a nice little community. He had a child with special needs, and he got into manipulatives and got that going throughout his entire school. Math manipulatives, and had all these family math nights and had all these parents in, just like himself, learning to do manipulatives with their children. Turned that school around. It's great. That's what we're talking about. Family reading night. Here's the reading material. Family EOG, EOC. Here's the things you need to be working with your kids on. So that is the heart of the OMA. And then task 1, prompt 2 is do an assessment of school leadership through either the teacher survey in South Carolina or TWC in North Carolina. Just do an assessment, make some recommendations about what they could do better, especially in the area of communication. So it's really simple. So I'll pull that up. And so you can read right through here, just what I just told you. Background descriptions, the setting, clear statement of purpose. And all you got to say, the purpose of it is to determine the gaps in communication between the school and parents. Right there, it tells you it's not any more than that. Who's your participants? Analysis of the findings, set of recommendations that identifies avenues that will be established, a set of short-term and long-term. Remember, short-term is communication, long-term is an activity, in-person activity at your school. Prompt 2, you just do an analysis from the TWC or the South Carolina Teacher Survey of the school administration. Recommendation. Pretty easy. We're looking to determine the strengths and weaknesses of school leadership, most specifically in the area of communication, but anything that it says in there. All right, that's it. Now, second, you just figure out what are the resources that you're going to need to accomplish the short and long term. Now, It's two types of resources, human and fiscal. So here's your graphic organizer. Specific activity, this is for task 2. Timeline, this is your human resources, the person, I mean, who's going to do it? And then here's the resources you're going to need. Now, fiscal means what? Somebody tell me what fiscal means.
Is it monetary?
It means money. Thank you, Mary. So what should I see? I should see dollar figures. Human resources. That's either who's going to do it or if we got to hire somebody to do it. I should see names there. I should see names under persons responsible and the people who are going to do it. This is two different things. Students sometimes, well, why we got, this is the person who's going to supervise it to make sure it happens. That fidelity check, remember, that's what we do as school administration. We do fidelity checks. We make sure stuff happens. Who's going to do the fidelity checks? And then who's actually going to deliver whatever we're going to deliver. That's two different things. Sometimes it's, you do both, but this is for your formative evaluation, your fidelity check. Because guess what? In task 3, we're just going to extend this right here, formative assessment method. How is this person responsible going to assess whether this is happening or not? And then summative, did it work or not? Remember, goal is where we'd like to get to eventually, but we have an indicator of success. Our goal might be, 50% parent participation at some point, but we can't start with that. If we get 10% start with, that'd be a good indicator of success if we haven't been getting any. But here are your graphic organizers. This one is for 2, the short one. And again, person responsible is who's going to check up on this stuff. And then the resources needed human is who's going to deliver it. Who's actually going to do the work? And then how much money are they going to need to do these things for both your short and your long term? And then over here, formative assessment method. This person that's responsible for it, how are they going to assess whether it's happening or not? And then summative assessment method is how are we going to determine if it worked? Well, we're going to take roll at these parent events. We're going to see how many came. Goal, 50%. Indicator of success, first year, 10%. Pretty simple. That's task 3. Task 4, you write your competencies. Pretty easy. That's what it tells you right here. You just put it all together. And then write your competencies. So the skip is not hard. Where you go wrong, the 2 places you go wrong. You think this is just a general needs assessment for academics. It's only for communication between the school and home. And the second is you don't understand the difference between a short-term goal and a long-term. Short-term is communication in this one. Long-term is an event. Now that we've got you hooked, we take advantage of that to get you here and do something with you. The end game is not just to communicate with people. The end game is use that communication to affect change in your building. Just like I was talking about, if you're not communicating with your teachers, as Lakeitha pointed out, and you're not giving them a seat at the table, why do you expect them to do anything different than what they're doing? What's the theory of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We're trying to do something different here. Now, that's a theoretical framework from Chris Argyros from Harvard. He was my major professor in my postdoc at Harvard. And yes, I'm not back patting myself on the back here. I matriculated from Carolina to Harvard. They needed somebody to clean up, straighten the place up. So that was me. But he was an older gentleman when I got there, already in his 90s. He lived a long time. But that's a real thing, folks. It's not just a catchy little saying. My point, I'm trying not to be boastful here. That's not just a catchy little saying. It's an actual theoretical concept that too many times we keep doing the things that we do, and we do them with more intensity or more frequency, expecting them eventually to work. They never do. If you're going to change, if you're going to get a different outcome, you have to change what you're doing. Formative assessment is the heart of that. Are we checking to see if it's happening? If it's happening and it's not working, we need to do something different. That's our job as school administrators, is to make sure stuff is happening as intended. Fidelity checks. Every time you do any kind of a plan or you put any kind of program in place, you've got to think up front, how am I going to assess if this is going on or not? If it's happening. I don't want to be, I don't want to be an insane person that just keeps on doing, I'll just double down and do more. I'll increase, the frequency or the intensity. This tutoring program's not working, so we'll do it 2 hours rather than 1. No, it's not working. Or we'll do it more days a week, either the intensity or the duration or the frequency. No, is it actually working for the intended purpose that it's for? I've told you I use the, with my doctoral students, I tell them all the time, 2-gallon method. I take David up on the roof, make him drink a gallon of water, and I throw him off. He hits the ground. I go down and pick him up. I make him drink 2 gallons of water. Throw him off again. No amount of water is going to make him fly. Now, I thought it would, because every bird I've ever seen drinks water. Makes sense, doesn't it? It's rational. Every bird I've ever seen drinks water, but there's no correlation between drinking water and flying. But see, I think if I just make him drink more water or more often, eventually that water will make him fly. It won't. Some of the programs we run in school, it doesn't matter if we double down, do them more often, frequency, intensity, duration. It's not the right thing. It doesn't get you the outcome that you want. Doing it more or more often or with more intensity will not change the fact that it doesn't work. That's our biggest problem in terms of evaluation in schools is we just assume that we're doing the right thing. It's just not working. By definition, if it's not working, it's not the right thing. But we see these connections that don't exist. The first lesson that you have to learn if you're learning about Pearson or Spearman and correlation, when I teach statistics in the doctoral program, is heat, ice cream, and crime. Do you realize that ice cream consumption and crime go up and down at exactly the same rate? Let me say that again. Ice cream consumption and crime go up and down exactly at the same rate, but they're not correlated. They're both correlated to a third variable, heat. So if I thought eating ice cream caused crime, I'd say we're just not going to serve ice cream at school anymore, and these kids have behaved better. No. And I've seen stuff that done. I've had schools, when I was in the central office in CMS, I've had schools that exceeded the district or the state average on number of out-of-school suspensions. If that happens, you are required to write an addendum to your school improvement plan called a school safety plan, state law, North and South Carolina. You got to write an addendum. What are you going to do to correct this behavior? I can't tell you the number of principals that I had back in the day when it was real popular who said, well, our plan next year is we're going to make our kids wear uniforms. Oh my God. We ought to fire the person that hired you. If they're that stupid. We ought to fire you and the person that hired you. That's just kids behaving badly dressed similarly. It's the kid in the uniform that's misbehaving. It's not the clothes he's wearing. Why would you think that would work? And then we had people who actually did that. I mean, our discipline's no better. We can't understand it. We're doing the right thing. We put them in uniforms. No, by definition, if it's not working, it's not the right thing. So you must assess any program that you put in. I think I had this rant last semester when we did the nights. You must assess these things. Is it really work? If you're implementing it with fidelity and it's not working, then you need something different. Doing more of it, more often, more intensity won't fix your problem. That's the theory of insanity. That's Dr. Argyris's double loop theory. Chris Argyris, Harvard, double loop theory. It's not just a catchy saying that's popular and people put it on t-shirts or signs or whatever. It's an actual theoretical basis. You have to understand that. You can't do the same things like you've always done them and expect anything other than what you've always been getting. That's the whole notion here. We're going to try to do something. We're going to try to do something indirect. We're going to get parents in and try to help them, help us help you help your child. That's the whole notion of the skip. We're trying to get an indirect bounce here. We're trying to get parents hooked and involved. And that involvement has to be on our terms. Getting them to come to a ball game is not going to help your academics, but getting them to come to family math night and teaching them how to work manipulatives with their kids, or family reading night on how to work with their children on reading, identifying, topics, things, whatever you want to do, the science of reading, working with that on your kids, or reading to your younger children. That works. So it's not just getting them in the building. It's not just communicating with them. It's the content of that communication that really matters. Okay. Questions about the skip? I've got an example for you. North and South Carolina examples. I've got those. I have the directions in there for your case study next week. Again, just jump into Leandro, and again, remember, the plaintiffs did not win. We did not. It's still a flat funding formula. So whether you're in Murphy or Manteo in North Carolina, whether you're in Anderson or Charleston in South Carolina, you get the same amount of money per kid, regardless of the wealth of your district. The state gives the kids in Charlotte-Mecklenburg $8,000. The district promptly adds another $8,000 to it. And in Rutherford County, they get $8,000, and they promptly give them a hearty handshake and slap on the back. That's what they add to the budget in Rutherford County. So they start with 8 and end with 8. Mecklenburg starts with 8 and ends with 16. Do you think there's a difference in the quality of the education in those two? Why, certainly there is. Why, certainly there is. You got to know that. But the overarching here is you got to spend money as it's intended. If you don't, what was it? I still contend that the Snoop Dogg that said this. Now, Renita tells me all the time that it was Biggie that said it. If you don't know, you better ask somebody. Don't spend a penny, even your own money, unless you have vetted that money to know exactly what that money is to be spent for. Know what it's to be spent for. Even the superintendent can't do it. And we have a perfect example from North Carolina, recent example of a superintendent who tried to skirt Leandro. See what happens to you when you do that. We've got some good stuff for you underneath tonight on cyberbullying. I refuse to read PowerPoints, but there's a really good one. Again, I didn't make it. My two collaborators, Dr. Sain and Dr. Griffin Jordan, made this one. It's a really good one on technology, social media, cyberbullying issues, and it's got all the legal definitions in it. It defines it well for you, everything you need to know about it, and it's only 23 slides long. You should work through this one. This is a crash course in all of these, and it's really good. You don't have to read books and spend days. Spend 30 minutes with this, and you'll understand all these things. So it's under tonight's lesson. I've got a couple more things under there that you can read. I'll go ahead and close that one. Again, here's what happens. This is about our case study on our content. Here's the new updated cyberbullying law. And here's the updated Title IX right here. And here's the Title IX video, the training video that goes with it. And again, not reporting sexual allegations. I told you that there's a criminal case that's still on the docket. Now it's not just you get in trouble civilly for not reporting. You get charged. You can be charged criminally. If these people lose, it's a game changer. You've got to report this stuff, and you can't initiate investigations yourself according to Title IX now. That's not within your purview. And then here's the North Carolina cyberbullying website. And this has all that stuff in it. The that PowerPoint summarizes and goes to all these places and does all this stuff for you, puts it in one handy dandy place. But if you're one of those people that likes to dig in, right here it is. You can spend weeks on this one because it has a lot of associated links that go with it. All right, I think that's pretty good. Not reporting, technology, review case study 2. I think we've done all those things we've talked about to skip. And so when I'm with you next, let's look at our weekly schedule. When I'm with you next, we'll do our case study on next Wednesday on the 25th. After the week after that, we have a holiday. We don't have class that week. And then we will do, we'll work on discipline. We've set ourselves up through due process and all these other things. We've introduced it all semester so that we can do it in one night. Otherwise, it takes 2 or 3 nights. And y'all don't want to have to hear me drone on for that long. And so, and again, if you haven't done it yet, interview an assistant principal, and make sure you get somebody low level. I'm always interested because now, if you think my intention is to insult one of your APs, you're right, it is. Usually they're the dumb ones of the bunch. And you can learn more from dumb people sometimes who do bad practice than you can smart people. That's why I want you to talk with the lowest level person that does discipline in your building. It's just like student teaching. We put student teachers with the best teachers in the building, and what happens when you come, you don't even know there's such a thing as classroom management. We do student teachers such a disservice by putting them with teachers that don't have any classroom management problems. They don't learn that. They don't even know that's a thing until they get in the first classroom of their own, and then they get overwhelmed. My wife's a perfect example. I've told you that before. She's curriculum. She's one of them EDCI ladies that I loathe, and been married to her for 39, soon to be 40 years. But she did curriculum for the district in the summer, but she had a laboratory classroom. That's what she did during the year. The demonstration laboratory classroom at Davidson College. Had a lab school there, 240 kids. I told you they were the smartest 240 kids in the district of over 150,000 kids. You know, you had to keep them out of the sunlight. Their glasses were so thick the light would burn the paper on their desk. I mean, they were brilliant kids. And you can try all these things with those kinds of kids. But she would have student teachers. Well, my wife's small, but I think she was colloquially known as the Queen of Mean. So the kids dared not say a word back to her ever. They weren't the kind of kids that were going to do that anyway. But student teachers had an unrealistic view of what teaching was for being with her. She never had a discipline problem. Those kids were, they were such an overachieving kids to begin with. They never were a behavior problem ever. There was no classroom management other than we did exactly what Miss Lamb said, period, and do it now. We put student teachers with those kinds of people, and our student teachers don't learn the real ins and outs of the job. We need to talk to assistant principals. Some of them aren't very good at it, don't know the law, they're getting their feet on the ground. We can learn a lot from them about what not to do. Sometimes we need the bad example. I always like that in discipline is show me you need to see the bad example. Somebody that's snowed in, that's overworked, that's behind their paperwork, that you need to see what happens if you don't follow the rules and aren't very good at it and don't understand what you're doing. And I don't wish this on you, but some of you are going to have some APs like that. And you can learn more from them than you can the good people who understand the purpose. It's not just to mete out punishment, that it's for restorative justice. You can learn what not to do as an AP from those people. So that's why I've got you out. I specifically want you to talk with a dean of students or an AP if you can, the lowest level of disciplinary processing. You're more likely to get a bad one there. And learn a lot from, I won't do that when I get my job. Well, that's the whole idea. I need for you to see the bad examples sometimes. You learn more. They're more illustrative for our purposes. All right. What have I missed tonight? All right. It's time for questions. Again, your work's great. I read every word. Don't have everybody's caught up or ahead. Nobody's behind. We're moving right through. Some of you've already, Roger's already finished both his OMA and skip. And most of you finished the OMA. If you're not, need to get it knocked out. And if you want me to, in a couple of weeks, I'll cover the CAP. If we got anybody that gets there, I'll be glad to do that. One night, take a few minutes and talk about it. It's really easy. You just look at 5 areas of your teacher working condition survey. That's all you have to do with it. It's kind of hard in the summertime because the second part is you got to do some teacher interviews and there's nobody in your building now. So if you had been a semester prior, what we do with those people, what we do in the spring is because we've got 16 weeks, we accelerate them into the CAP because there's no teachers in the summertime, and you've got to do qualitative on it. You've got to look at your quantitative from the teacher work condition survey or the teacher survey in South Carolina, and then you've got to go out and resurvey them again to make the low items to make sure that data is still reliable. Well, sometimes it can be 2 years old and you could have changed principles or whatever. And then you go out and talk to people for the purpose of, these scores are low in this area. What can we do to fix it? That's the whole idea there. Is to quit doing the same thing you've been doing. You've already heard that boring lecture tonight. We try to get you to do something different. So you go talk to people, and there's 5 areas in the CAP: time, facilities, resources, school leadership, and teacher leadership. The big one is time. We always get teachers say, I don't have enough time for planning. And, if you don't go talk to people, you'd say, well, the thing to do is put more planning in the master schedule, but we can't do that. But when we go and talk to teachers anyway, they say, oh, there's plenty of time in the schedule. I just never get to take it because I'm covering classes. So the solution there is not to put more time in the schedule for planning. It's to hire substitutes so that you can use the time you've already got. That's the kind of stuff you find out when you go talk to people. And that's the value of that qualitative. So that's all that one is. It's not really long or hard. It's there's no template. It can be more free form how you like to put it together. That's the whole purpose of the skip, is that everybody shouldn't look exactly the same because you're going to do different things. And so that's why we don't give you a template for the skip, because you can come up with some really great stuff if you don't just have to try to follow a format. I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I would have never figured out to do a parent college fair at Northwest Guilford. If we'd have had a template, they wouldn't have thought of it either. But because you get to do your own, they came up with this idea and said, sounds good to me. They invited me up. I wore a suit. We had lunch. It was nice. Novant was paying. It was a big deal. We had a big time. And so, what would really help your school? Now, somebody asked me last night, you just said school's out. How am I going to put a team together? Your team might be you. Your team might be some people that you communicate with virtually in the summer. It might be your team that you here in class is your team, your skip team. Again, be creative with your team. You got no template. This is you get to do something that would interest you at your school, that you think would work at your school. That's the notion here. All right. Anybody have anything else tonight for the good of the group, or just questions tonight? Keeping my eye on the clock. I try to give you some, as long as we went last week. Well, y'all just took a whipping last week, didn't you? Had to be on for 2.5 hours. Man, I felt bad for you myself. But it was a great night. I really enjoyed it. We learn a lot from that, or I do. I learn something every time. I think that's why I look forward to these classes so much. I love to learn. I love to read. I learn so much from y'all because y'all live it every day. I don't. I'm a has-been. But y'all are in the trenches, and y'all are what we should all be about. We're training y'all, and we can't ever forget that link and how important public schools are, and even privates and charters. Educating kids, I don't care what form. Educating kids, it's God's work, and that's what y'all are doing. And that needs to be our focus, is what's going on in schools every day, not some theoretical basis. I do theoretical work and dissertations all the time, but this is real. This means something. This matters. All right, questions? Anybody? All right. Love you, mean it. I'll see you next week. I'm looking forward to the case study. Everybody have a good one.